Tanvijit Singh Desi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and my gratitude also to the Labour Treasury team for facilitating this opportunity to debate the devastating effect of government policy on the finances of working people. I know the British people have had a very difficult 18 months during the COVID crisis. The sorrowful loss of lives, inexcusably the highest death toll in Europe, despite having our world-class NHS and our world-class public health systems, an unforgivable care home crisis, soaring unemployment, businesses closing, food bank usage skyrocketing, and most recently the tragic debacle in Afghanistan, leaving many of us, especially my Slough constituents and British Afghans, in absolute despair. I don't think anyone in this chamber could have foreseen the debilitating impact of a pandemic that would have on our communities when we all had the honour of being elected as members of Parliament. At this point, I want to pay tribute, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the extraordinary generosity and service of the Slough Council for Voluntary Service, the Slough Food Bank, and other voluntary and faith groups within my constituency. But we as a nation shouldn't have to rely so heavily on their goodwill. The government should not be failing the most vulnerable. So as we emerge from what has been a very testing period for our country, I despair at the direction this government are taking us in. Instead of rebuilding, investing and stimulating our economy, it seems that they are more intent on ideological cuts to the very services and people that have kept this country going since March 2020. Rises to national insurance, universal credit cut, the upcoming freeze of the personal income tax allowance, inflation-busting rail fare increases, the highest petrol prices since 2013, rampant waste and cronyism and corruption in the top levels of government, the damage caused by the government's hardline Brexit deal, the supply chain and HGV drivers chaos, leading to empty supermarket shelves, government forcing local authorities to raise council tax, and its unwillingness to outlaw the deplorable fire and rehire tactics of unscrupulous employers. Some of the highest childcare costs in the world, a housing crisis worsened by a cladding crisis, the absence of a sector-specific deal for our aviation sector, which at one point was world-leading, despite repeated pleas from the likes of myself and other right honourable members. Policing cuts leading to less safer communities, the exorbitant increase in energy bills, leaving many languishing in absolute despair, all while we had a Tory government asleep at the wheel, acting only when it's very late in the day. And make no mistake, Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst the government may want to make it seem that way, these vital issues have not arisen solely because of the COVID pandemic. But these matters have been exacerbated by a decade of austerity, inadequate emergency support, met with a failing post-pandemic plan. A perfect storm which only leaves families worse off. In Slough, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have been acutely impacted by job losses and the inadequate government support. With Heathrow and the largest singly owned trading estate, the Slough trading estate, on our doorstep, unemployment, furlough and food bank usage have all sadly increased. We cannot allow a temporary crisis to unevenly and permanently change prospects across our country. We must assist those who have fallen on hard times through no fault of their own, not punish them further with ill-thought-out Conservative government policy. Yes, I will give way to my right honourable friend.
Would he agree with me that he touched on aviation, Heathrow? That is a sector that isn't going to recover anytime soon. It's going to need support not only for months but probably for years before we get back to the levels that we've seen, and this government is failing to recognise that.
I thank my honourable friend, and I know that the crisis within Heathrow has not only impacted my Slough constituency, but it has also impacted regional airports, and it has impacted the economy of Wales, for which I know that my honourable friend feels so passionately. And that is why we must help the aviation sector, because from being the busiest airport within Europe, Heathrow is now no longer even in the top 10, which is absolutely diabolical. And I think that is as a direct consequence of the inaction of this inept government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it's how we will effectively recover as a nation. One of the most immediate dangers facing Slough constituents in the government's barrage of cuts and policies is the cut to universal credit. £20 a week, Madam Deputy Speaker, over £17 million cut from my constituency as a whole. Families who have battled through a pandemic, who were clapped, who face a very difficult job market, with children who have only just returned to the routine of school. Constituents have contacted me who had been furloughed, then capped on their universal credit, struggling to make ends meet. Self-employed people losing all their income and being told to use food banks and universal credit. So continued cries from the government benches opposite that this is a solution is quite frankly insulting to all the families who work tirelessly just to put food on the table.
Will you give way?
Yes, I will, to my honourable friend.
Thank you very much. On that point, does he agree that it's really disrespectful for the Secretary of State to say, well, people can just pick up another couple of hours of work? If you are a working mother who is already on part-time hours because of childcare, you can't just suddenly become an HGV driver overnight or pick up a couple of extra hours. That's not how this works.
I thank my honourable friend from Aberdeen, and she has eloquently put forward the point which I had not been able to do in so many words. And I think it is very, very important that even that calculation of 2 hours was demonstrated to be completely off the mark. I think 9 hours is closer to the mark in terms of the extra hours that hard-working Brits will need to work. Madam Deputy Speaker, another dominating issue when it comes to constituents asking for my help is housing. And sadly, it's unsurprising. Average rent prices have risen by £456 in a year, the highest seen since 2008, rising above average wages by over £2,000, leaving home ownership a distant and impossible dream for too many in the next generation. Yes, I will, to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to my friend for giving way, and the issues he's talking about will result in more debt. Is he surprised to know that debt in this country is actually 123% of household income, and that there have been 27,662 individual insolvencies in the second quarter of this year? So people are in trouble now. If we withdraw this additional help, how on earth are we going to, how on earth are they going to make ends meet?
I thank my honourable friend from Stockton, and once again he is an endless fountain of statistics, as he has demonstrated within today's debate. Despite not being on the call list, I think the number of interventions that he's made with such hard-hitting points is something that I think the government must listen to. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think that this impossible dream for so many within the next generation is important to highlight, because it's the quality and quantity of social and affordable housing which is wholly inadequate, and that's an issue that the government has failed to address despite being in power for well over a decade. Just last year, reports showed that the affordable housing increased by just 1%, 90,000 homes short of the bare minimum needed to tackle this crisis. And what about those who do own homes, which are now worthless due to the government inaction on unsafe cladding? Madam Deputy Speaker, it is an absolute shambles. It means that a mother of two going without food to pay her rent and feed her children, others moving from property to property due to rent arrears and evictions, and one constituent even telling me that their struggle with paying rents and bills made them feel like, and I quote, that there is no way out. It's a vicious cycle. It's a downward spiral. Is this really the kind of society that we want to be living in post-pandemic? I certainly don't. We need to realise, Madam Deputy Speaker, the potential in our great country and give businesses, families and young people the tools that they need to rebuild and prosper, not break them down before a recovery has even begun.